Hello everybody, Sampo here, and we are back to review the secret episode, also known as the extra episode, episode 27, Action. This is part of season 5, and I'll say this right now, it is non-canon, because if it was canon, there are a few things that I would say that's canon. It is canon because Marinette and Adrian are together, and of course, that's kind of about it. They're basically pretty much together and they're actually pretty comfortable, which sets this basically in the middle of season 5. The only problem is that even though it's in the middle of season 5, is taking place, this episode takes place basically in the episode order after the season finale. And more so, the theming of this episode is more of an environmental message with a structure that is super similar to how seasons 1 to 3 were. Basically the villain of the week, so to speak. And while I don't mind the structure, I will consider this non-canon because if this was canon, it has evidence that this can actually take place during in the middle of season 5 before the Lila arc of her being caught in the act. But if that was the case, the biggest lesson that was been taught at the end of that arc where Chloe was mayor for Ladybug and everybody else in Paris is undermined because this episode would technically did it first, which would undermine Marinette learning about this and Adrian and most of her friends, because they all learned to take the initiative in that episode. But they do learn that same lesson in this episode, and if this episode takes place beforehand, because it most likely does, that undermines that one, because so no one's gonna stand up to Chloe, not even when everybody learned this lesson already. We have, if this is not in sense, because this doesn't really fit anywhere in the timeline of season 5 specifically, and it has no arcing story that actually correlates to any other previous events. I'll consider this non-canon, but it is part of the season 5 catalog. But without further ado, with all that talk, let's actually begin. And the review is going to be pretty simple, and this is all you really need to know about the actual story. Nino and the rest of the crew are basically on Julica's houseboat, which basically has now been refurnished into a plastic filter facility in a sort of way. They're collecting plastic from the waterway because there's a lot of plastic there. Because of the fad that's going on with the heat wave, a lot of people are using plastic fans and dumping all the plastic into the water, and they're trying to pick it up. And Nino basically talks about for at least maybe 5 minutes with other of their friends basically chiming in to tell Marinette and Adrian and us as the viewer that plastic is bad for the environment, it is messy, and most of these people don't know how to reuse it, and we should be looking for better alternatives. So basically, this is the reason why I consider it non-canon, because it was heavily focusing on the first half of the episode, heavily focusing that the plastic is bad and may possibly try to do your own thing here. Sorry about that, the pop-up from my computer if you actually heard that. But yeah, pretty much that. It's just an environmental message that plastic is bad. A very good message. I'll say this is a very good message, and they did bring the point home. But because of that, since it's the actual length of a true episode of Miraculous, we have to basically kind of stretch this out for like 30 minutes. So what else they gonna have here? Pretty simple, really. So you guys already know the main plot line. They would have to basically, the main whole plot line is like plastic is bad, that's about it. But technically speaking, there is a main bad here, which he doesn't seem like a bad guy, but he was just because, business forced him to be this way, and this is the only way he can make profit. And that guy is the CEO of the plastic company himself, Mr. something, forgot his name, but most likely we all can know him as the King of Plastic. That is his official title, the King of Plastic. Why? Because he makes a lot of plastic products that are very useful for everyday living. And here's the thing, the kids do actually walk up to him while asking one of his employees and basically make this presentation about, same thing, plastic is bad and stuff like that, right? He is convinced and he would like to help them. Unfortunately, he can't, because if he stopped making plastic, he will not make money, and if he doesn't make money, he will be bankrupt and out of business. And the thing is, he would go with other alternatives, but plastic is really the only thing he knows, and he's got to stick to that no matter what. This includes to every other higher up, like the mayor and Gabriel, basically. Now, we do have a talk with Gabriel and the mayor, and those are pretty short, and also with the news. The mayor's reason is pretty simple and a bit selfish, but it makes sense because he's a politician at this point. And yes, this takes place in the middle of season 5, but because he is still the mayor, it would either be non-canon or it takes place right before the Lila arc, basically. The whole Lila arc. And yeah, the reason why he's supporting plastic, it keeps his image up because, everybody is using these, and if he just, gets rid of them at one day, maybe not a lot of people will like him and stuff like that, Of course, not a lot of people would know any better, and he cannot really, stop supporting the actual company, because if he does, it will make a bad name for himself because the company has a good reputation. We have Adrian talking to his father. His father says that, yeah, while he doesn't really like this outcome, he's only doing this because it's a fad and the fad makes money and stuff like that. And besides, he did say that once the fad is over, he is going to stop using it because it's just a fad. Nobody wants to use plastic anymore, and he'll use actual, good fabrics for his actual good designs. But Adrian's like, but this plastic will just ruin for another centuries or so. It's not like a fad, and but then Gabriel just got enough of his son. It's just, you can just walk out right now and stuff like that, like goodbye son, stuff like that. You can just walk yourself out. And then we have Marinette basically talking to Shima. Basically here, Marinette's telling Shima, the main news anchor. It's kind of a little tough because here's the thing, the company owns the news station because the company actually puts their ads a lot in between the story sections basically. And of course the ad runs, the money gets off from the ads, so on and so forth. And that's actually also how she makes money. And if she basically goes against the company, she would actually be living in the streets, which would also sacrifice her being a role model for her daughter, basically trying to be a successful person and actually make a living for them so they can live their best life. While Marinette's thinking of the future, the news reporter, or at least the news anchor, is thinking of the right now. What she can do now to support her child, not thinking of the future that she could have, which is better, but supporting her right now, which is what she needs the most. Which is a very good argument in both sides, but I think I would agree with the news anchor here. Marinette is really pushing the good person shtick when you realize that she's technically forcing the new anchor to, get fired and, just for the greater good. Then we basically have the kids saying that, plastic is bad and stuff like that. A interruption news report, basically. With Max's help, they hijacked the news system and broadcasting system to basically send out their message. It's a very good message and is very in-depth, and of course, again, similar to what Nino says 10 minutes ago, but this time more clarification, and of course with 2 other Easter eggs. We get a message from Faye, who was actually participating in this broadcast as well, and of course we have another one. We have the New York girls. Now, if this took place in the middle of season 5, this would have been a very good time for a reference to these girls to acknowledge that they do exist in this world, because we have like a single Easter egg shout out for Shanghai beforehand in like the last season. So seeing that this is technically only reference is pretty weird. But considering that this is episode 27, where they do appear in the season finale part 2, just nowhere earlier, and they're resonated as in this quote unquote, as of now I'll say, non-canon episode, pretty jarring and a little disappointing on their end, to say the least, but it is what it is. At least we see them, and the possibility that if this episode does take place somewhere in between season 5 where it could make sense, then it would be a very good addition since we'll see them again and getting the knowledge before the season finale. Then we have the higher-ups changing their mind, with the mayor basically getting rid of all the plastic dispensers and now fighting for, against pollution. And then we have Gabriel basically lying to the press that he never knew that this was happening with his products. After all that, basically, and this is like 2 days later, the king of plastic is basically going to blackmail Gabriel about, you can't do this to me. If you cannot just lie about this, you're involved. And if you don't, continue supporting me, I will basically blackmail you and tell everybody that you knew this the whole time. And of course, Gabriel's like, oh, nobody's gonna believe you anyway, and stuff like that. It's kind of a simple thing. It's kind of a stupid thing to actually end off a conversation because he exits here. But then, of course, after this, the King of Plastic is mad, and you already know the rest. We do get to see Monarch transforming for the second time in the series. It's been a while since we saw a transformation sequence. And of course, akumatizing the King of Plastic into the King of Plastic. Because I think they ran out of names, but the King of Plastic makes the most sense because of his title, and a very good villain name, to be honest. A good villain name for like a quick villain name, the King of Plastic. So he is also made of plastic. His design is based off the plastic multi-pencil that he has. And his power is that he can turn people into plastic, and his miraculous power is pollen, which he could use venom to stun people, and then later you can turn them into plastic, which they're pretty much useless. Before we get to the actual way that how they defeat him and a little bit of the battle, at this point in time, Adrian is teaching Marinette how to learn Mandarin, which is actually kind of consistent to Marinette's character, as she wants to learn Mandarin. Maybe not to just get closer to Adrian, but also later if she ever needs to go back to Shanghai for whatever reason, now she can learn Mandarin. And she understands Mandarin, and so she can speak in that Chinese language in order to communicate with the people there. Because we all know what happened last time in Shanghai special. So yeah. After knowing the problem, they're gonna try to help Mr. Aggress. At this point in time, they do not know, both of them don't know, specifically Marinette does not know that Gabriel is Monarch, because this is either non-canon or takes place before that time. So yeah. And yes, both the heroes finally get their transformation sequence. It's been such a long time. After stopping the King of Plastic from attacking Gabriel, he goes off and tries to, attack the children, because for as of now, Gabriel is not exactly the priority, since at this point they know that they're gonna keep attacking, and the house is very big, so he can get cornered. So he's doing the strategic way and trying to find his next target. So how do they feed him? Well, of course, they're on a boat. That's where everybody is. And here's the thing. Lucky Charm is a plastic bag. The plastic bag cannot be turned into plastic because it's already plastic. So her plan is to basically blow up the ship. Because the ship, since is a plastic collecting source thing. I forgot what I just said before. A plastic water plastic collector. Basically, taking all the plastic from the water. There's a lot of plastic on the boat because they collected it from the water. Her plan was to basically blow up the ship, at least the engine that's sucking up all this plastic. And then once the engine overloads, it will just basically implodes and sends all the plastic flying, and then all of them will fall onto the King of Plastic. And guess what? It works, because, it does kind of work. And he does get buried for a while, and then, they crack his lance where the Miraculous is, which was the pencil, and then the day is saved. They use plastic to defeat plastic. In terms of fighting this villain, it's actually okay, and the reason why is more so of a metaphor, or not more of a metaphor, it's just setting an example. So at this point in time, they actually tell him why he's like this, and also relating to this situation to the animals of the sea, that they're also swimming or at least trapped in trash just like him if this continues. And later, of course, he has a change of heart. And the thing is, this makes the most sense, as even though people know that, you know, polluting the environment is bad, they will only know how bad it is if they experience it themselves and see the gravity of the situation. And so he came to realization that yes, plastic is bad. Maybe it's not as fantastic as I thought. So he does take a change of heart. And now he becomes a supporter of fighting against pollution to save the environment. And of course, he will basically make his plastic material more reusable and of course recyclable, but also maybe it's also, and also he says, I know I said also a lot, I'm sorry, but he's going to basically implement more biodegradable stuff in the future, which he is going to do right now as searching for new alternative ways instead of just plastic all the time. And that's about it. Overall, it's a very good episode. For season 5 standards, not exactly the best, but in terms of like season 1 to 3, it is pretty good. Since because it is a non-canon episode, I will give it more leeway. But if this was a canon episode, I'll have a little trouble of actually putting this as a good thing. So if this was canon, I will give this a possible 5 out of 10, because while it has a good message and is very enjoyable, the only problem is that it affects the story timeline so much. We don't know when in the timeline. We only know that it's somewhere, it is obviously after the beginning of season 5, so it's somewhere in the middle, but some of the stuff in this episode contradicts a lot of stuff that happened either a little beforehand before the middle of season 5, but it does gravely affect after season 5. Besides the cameos, besides the Easter eggs of both Faye and the New York girls, that's about it. So overall, that's my canon ranking if this was canon. My non-canon ranking, which is the one I am going to officially give this one, is basically a pretty good 7 out of 10. A very good average episode that has a very good message behind it. A very important message behind it, in fact. So that's about it. It's a very simple episode to basically understand. And yeah, remember, plastic is bad for the environment. Remember to reuse and recycle all your stuff. And use, if possible, stuff that is alternative to plastic and much safer for the environment. And yeah, don't forget to hydrate, because drinking water is very important. Other than that, my name is Sunpo, and I'll see you guys next time for season 6 possibly. But there is the Miraculous World Paris version, where we will have the darker versions of Ladybug and Cat Noir, and possibly Hawkmoth. I wonder if he would be a good guy in this one. I don't know, but we'll see when the special actually comes out. But I might do a season review, a very quick review basically, on my thoughts and opinions on the whole series as a whole, of the season of course, not the whole series. Maybe sometime in the future, but maybe. All we can now wait for is hopefully that Disney will do a good job writing and taking over the writing team, because Disney is going to be in charge of Miraculous Season 6, most likely the writing. I hope that they will hire actual people and not use AI, because if that was the case, and I actually would prefer the old writing type of Miraculous besides AI. That's the only thing. Unless they have advanced AI, which I would be very terrified of. But yeah, that's about it. Remember, get here, or become the fertilizer that feeds it.